What up, world? This your man's TCO, the chosen wonder from the individuals. I click, you know what it is, let a thug smoke. I'm here to talk about my man's Eddy Lepp, political prisoner, man. He just turned himself in to do 10 years straight. 57 years old, man. He got caught with growing over around 25,000 plants in 2004. And basically, man, he going to jail for nothing. We're going to keep it like that. So me and the individuals, we had an opportunity to interview this man, and it's what it is.
In 1972, I went to Vietnam, and due to the carnage I'd seen and the things that I was involved in doing in one thing or another, I started smoking pot, and somehow made it better, somehow made it easier to cope with. Everybody over there was smoking pot, snorting heroin, or drinking booze. And I looked at pot was better than booze, and smoked quite a bit of it. I also ended up using heroin for a short time while I was in Vietnam. And then I came home, and for about 15 or 16 years, I spent most of my life in the bottom of a bottle or chasing pills or lines or whatever drug you could use, I used. And about 20 years ago, I got my life turned around and I got sober, started trying to get sober. And my dad got real sick and had cancer. And over the year and a half it took him to die, the only way I could get him to eat was to smoke pot with him. And he had a tracheotomy tube, and that's how I ended up learning to roll the 1.5 grams fatties, was because he would toke them and poke them right in his trach hole and smoke them through his trach, and that's how I ended up rolling the big joints all the time. I know for a fact in my heart I added at least a month and a half to my dad's life, because the last 6 months of his life, the only way we kept him alive was Ensure, and the only way I could even get him to drink that was to get him stoned. And after that, I went to the National Center for PTSD because of Vietnam, and really applied myself diligently to trying to get off the booze and the drugs, which would end up taking me another 1.5 years. But at that time, I met my wife, Linda, and after about 6 years, 7 years together, she got cancer of the thyroid. And prior to her getting cancer of the thyroid, her daughter, Chrissy, was a caregiver for a young gentleman dying of AIDS. And I had met Dennis Perone several times throughout the course of my life, but we weren't really friends. I just knew him. And then because of my daughter's involvement with this young man, we went down and got to know Dennis very well. Dennis and I became good friends, and to this day, Dennis is one of my best friends in the whole world. And Dennis started talking about 215 and this other crazy shit, and opened up his original store down on Church Street. And we started getting the petitions out and getting them signed and everything, and the next thing you know, 215 got passed. And right after that, I became the first person arrested, tried, and acquitted under Proposition 215. And from there, the phone kind of rang off the hook. And before I got arrested, I was up smoking a joint under this big old pine tree one day. And I was communing with the Creator. And I didn't ask him for any special favors or fucking miracle or anything. I just asked that he give Linda the strength to realize that life was worth fighting for. And I promised that day that win, lose, or draw, no matter what happened with Linda, if he would give her that strength and allow her to fight for her life, that I would dedicate the rest of my life to spreading the word of the herb and doing God's work, helping those less fortunate than myself. Linda survived that, and the phone started ringing off the hook. People didn't know where to find lawyers. They didn't know where to find pot. They didn't know what their rights were. They didn't know anything. And Linda and I at one time had gotten almost 5,000 patients their recommendations through meetings that we had at our homes, bringing doctors in to give people their recommendations. And we started helping more and more people, and it became apparent that the biggest problem for the medical marijuana user was the ability to grow their own medicine, because there were so many complications. They either lived in an apartment or government housing or this or that, or they couldn't do it, or they didn't have the knowledge. And so we came up with the idea that we would, through the ministry, provide a place for people to grow their own medicine. And we began that back in 2000, and it gradually grew. And then in 2002, the feds came in and took our crop, took our entire garden, which we replanted and successfully harvested, I think, about 70 or 80 pounds that year. Then the following year, they didn't come in and bother us at all, and we harvested 600 and some plants. And then the next year, in 2004, they came in, and I was arrested for the first time. And over that, I was looking at 2 life sentences and $8.5 million in fines. And then they came back 5 months later, and I got arrested again and was under 2 more life sentences and more fines. So it was a total of 4 life sentences, $17 million in fines, an additional 40 years and $600 in special assessments. And that's basically how I ended up here. I never really asked for it. I never really wanted it. The truth is, I'm really quite reclusive. I like staying in my room. But I have an obligation to God. I made a promise. And there's nothing that they can do to me that will ever make me break that promise to God. Because I don't fear them. I do fear what might happen if I break my word to the Creator. And so, we're at an impasse. They tell me I can't. God tells me I must. Who are you going to listen to? So I follow my heart. I know who's right. I know who's wrong. And sadly, they're very, very wrong. But hopefully the good Lord will allow them to open their eyes and see. Time will tell. But anyway, that's how I ended up here.
You seen it, it's a sad story. He got to get 10 years, 57 years old, for helping the sick. Free Eddy Lepp.